Welcome to the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. My name is Dr. Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and leader in the field of mental health, energy psychology, addiction, trauma, and empowerment. In this podcast, we will be exploring mental health from a variety of perspectives, from the spiritual to the shamanic and beyond. What if mental illness isn't everything we think it is? What if everything we see as a pathology is actually a possibility? What else is possible with mental health?
Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you today with another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. I'm really excited to have with me today Veronica Mershak. She is a holistic trauma specialist, presently based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and her primary focus is how trauma, suppressed emotions, and the situations relating to these emotions are kept and held in the body. She assists clients in understanding how this can result in certain physical manifestations. She is a body talk practitioner and a trauma or tension release provider. She also uses a talk therapy called quantum field talk therapy. And as a result, she has an innovative approach as she combines these modalities and tailors them according to a client's individual needs, with the objective being to assist clients in releasing the emotional charge of trauma, as well as allowing a safe space for clients to be vulnerable and receptive as they shift their perceptions of trauma and gain a deeper understanding that their bodies are always working for them to protect them rather than against them. Oh, excited to have this conversation. Welcome, Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes. So as always with the show, I like to start with finding out a little bit about our guest. So tell us some about your story, how you came to be doing this really important work that you're doing in the world.
Right. So I've always been interested in how the body works, more of your alternative healing practices. So while conventional medicine, that approach, that allopathic approach has its role, absolutely. I feel that when it comes to healing, it only touches one part. So I think as a society and over time have disregarded the mental and the emotional influences on the physical body. So your mental and your emotional body lie just outside your physical body. And harboring certain emotions like grief, anger, and those are surface level emotions absolutely drop down into the physical body, into your organs, body parts, endocrine systems, and as a result cause a malfunction. So I was really, really interested in this. So let's take my story, for example. I've obviously been through a certain amount of trauma. I had 2 miscarriages. I lost my dad at a young age. I've been in 2 armed robberies. So it really dysregulated my nervous system. And I started seeing how that patterned into my physical body. And that was pretty much how I got started in all of this. Always been an avid reader in it, always researched a lot of it, always applied a lot of it. But it was only until I'd say I really had my own experiences with it and kind of like an aha moment of connecting the dots in my life and then connecting the dots in my body. And wow, okay, there's a massive parallel. And what do we do about this? So I did a 180 career shift and turned my life into basically dedicating it to this work I do. And I absolutely love it.
Wonderful. And the way I found you was actually through an article you had written for Brains magazine, BRAINZ, which I also used to write for. And just for the audience, it's a really fascinating online magazine, lots of really brilliant people excelling at all kinds of areas. I mean, from business to health and all of that. And you'd written this article on how trauma causes inflammation in the body. And I just thought it was fascinating and wanted to really take a deeper dive on the podcast into that topic, because it's something that not a lot of even trauma experts are necessarily talking about. So tell us a little bit about that article and how exactly, what is the connection between trauma and inflammation, and why does it even matter?
So if we look at what inflammation is, it's a physical bodily response to an external, potentially harmful stimuli. So what would happen, for example, you fall, you cut yourself, the body then produces white blood cells, they rush to the area, it inflames, you get a slight fever if we're looking at, larger things like pathogens, and your body comes to your defense. It reacts as a defensive mechanism because there's something in your environment that is potentially traumatizing or dangerous. So now we look at trauma. Trauma is pretty much, you can see the parallel between the two. Trauma, we can define it as, yes, absolutely something that's happened to you, but your inability to respond at the time, your helplessness, that feeling of helplessness. So it's how your body internalizes that defenselessness in a very traumatic situation. And that's why there's such a scale of trauma. So what one person may absorb in a very traumatic way, another person may not, based on their experiences, their body-mind complex, what cellular memory their body holds. So trauma does or has pretty much a similar effect from a physical perspective. So if you look at someone who's gone through sexual abuse and there's a certain look that the perpetrator had, beard, glasses, or whatever the story is, and she's newly remembering this, or she's going through a certain type of therapy for it, it can be very triggering to her. What would happen is her body perceives that situation as dangerous, as a threatening situation. So it doesn't matter if it's a pathogen, a bacteria, or if it's something that's more on the emotional side or on the environmental side. The body will react. So it will inflame, you will get a fever potentially. And this is where we look at chronic trauma, chronic stress, and chronic inflammation. So the body is constantly scanning, especially the nervous system. The nervous system has got a beautiful host of cellular memory on its own. So we can look at cellular memory, we can liken it to muscle memory. So cellular memory refers to a memory held in cells that are not the brain cells. And very sophisticated cells are the cells in the nervous system. So they will see that your nervous system is constantly aware of your surroundings. Is it safe? Is it not safe? And if you sees yourself in an unsafe situation, it reacts to inflammation. So if you are living in a constant traumatic state, you are constantly hypervigilant from a nervous system perspective. You are constantly inflamed.
So essentially what you're saying is, for some people, especially people who have had a history of trauma, the body keeps the score. We know this. Trauma is physiological, not just psychological. And it leaves, we could even say maybe some sort of energetic imprint, right? Or physiological imprint on our bodies. So that when you encounter a potentially threatening situation, your body mobilizes its defense system to protect you from the attack, right? So when, with your example of the person who committed, a sexual assault, maybe had glasses, so the victim of that experience, if their body is still holding that memory, may see a man of a certain stature wearing those kinds of glasses, and her immune system or her nervous system will start there, right? The nervous system will activate probably the fight, flight, freeze response and say, danger, danger. And the immune system then kicks in and launches what it knows to do if there's a threat. If you've been infected with a virus, if you have a cut or injury, it sends all the stuff throughout your body to help protect it from further injury. Am I encapsulating it correctly?
Yes, that is correct. So what would also, in addition to what you've said, so your body would, as you said, your body keeps score. So your body will hold that memory is the first thing. So if there is a past trauma, that would be considered a trigger. So it would trigger that inflammation. If it's even if it's not a trigger, if it's a new situation that one feels is quite dangerous, a new relationship that's quite dangerous, or a new part of the city that's quite dangerous, but that's generally recovered quite quickly. Because it's, all right, I'm in danger, I'm out danger. So it may last for hours, it may last for weeks. So anything like that. But we look at specifically, and I cannot tell you the amount of clients that have stress-related inflammation. It's one of the most common things I see in my practice is inflammation. and from an environmental perspective. The second thing, what happens is when we're in a constant state of stress, and what constitutes or help constitutes the inflammation is exactly as you mentioned, the energy side of things. So we are all energy. Everything is energy. Energy, where does it go? Where does that nervous energy go? Where does that trauma energy go? If it's not being dealt with and expelled, it's sitting in your body. So that's pretty much sums up exactly how the body would absorb not only trauma, but certain other emotions and suppressed emotions.
Okay. So now, in the case of someone who has experienced multiple traumas, like one of the things that I often talk about with my clients is the idea of chronic unresolved trauma. Unresolved meaning you're still holding that energy in the body. The cellular memory is still there. It hasn't been processed. It hasn't been dealt with, right? It's almost like sometimes I say to people, it's like someone hit the pause button right in the middle of the trauma and it never got to play all the way through. So if in a situation like that, when a person's had repetitive traumas, something happens in their brain, the amygdala, right, being kind of the center of the brain that decides whether or not scanning the environment, the stimuli are coming in, are we in danger or not? You end up with an amygdala that can be overactive, right? Where it's kind of lost its ability to differentiate between true danger, like a true life or death threat, which is what that fight, flight, freeze and is response is for, or versus a non-threat, right? Like the again, the same example you gave before, that woman who was traumatized with sexual assault, she might see every male she encounters could activate her amygdala, might say danger, danger, all men are dangerous. And then she could be, yes, in this chronic state of hypervigilance, always looking for the threat, and her body might remain in a state of constant alert in that stressed out state, which is causing a constant state of inflammation. Is that correct?
Correct. We can even go deeper if we look at the body as a whole in a constant state of inflammation, but we can look at an endocrine or body part or organ. So if you look at a sexual perpetrator, it's very possible that her uterus is and she's in a constant state of inflammation. We can also look at those certain things, or someone, who's been in an assault and has someone just fired at them and missed their arm, that it will be disproportionately inflamed as opposed to the rest of the body, which is still generally inflamed. So we get really, really specific in how that individual stores that trauma. And it's very different from me to you, because your makeup is different, my makeup is different, your experience is different, my experience is different. So it's so individual. So as there are so many generalizations, there are even more in individual cases where your body is absorbed based even on your frequency at the time. And scars are a big thing like that. The amount of memories that scars hold, they hold so much information based on what was going on around that time. It's quite phenomenal. And scars is a physical inflammation. If you burn yourself, or if you cut yourself, or there's something drastic that happens, or surgery, there's a physical inflammation. But what the body does, it almost takes a stamp and an absorption and a timestamp almost of everything that's going on in the environment, and that scar holds so much memory. So as it is the whole body, it can also be down to a body parts, and so it's really, really, really intricate and fascinating.
It really is, and so much more complex than our traditional Western medical or psychiatric perspective. But in terms of inflammation, I have two more questions about inflammation. So how does someone know, aside from, yes, like a physical scar might have, inflammation, but how else would someone know that they have like internal inflammation somewhere in their body?
Generally, it would be discomfort. Discomfort is a big thing. And very interesting, they generally don't know until you point it out to them, because they've had it their whole lives. So you carry on like that. Oh, well, I've always had it. I thought it was normal. So if it comes from a childhood or an intergenerational, it's normal. You don't know any different until you start doing the work and looking at yourself and introspective and say, well, this is actually not normal. And And people, and I feel like this is the most beautiful time for this because people are talking, and talking is so healing in itself. People are talking and talking, and well, I thought I was normal. I thought I was normal. Well, we both can't be normal, but you know what is normal at the end of the day as well. So it's quite interesting. But I would say majority of the time people are unaware is the one thing. The second thing is that you can have certain physical sensations, is that certain body parts heat up more than others because of the inflammation.
Mm-hmm. They heat up, so there could be heat. I'm thinking about a lot of folks I've worked with who have trauma have digestive, gastrointestinal, like every time after I eat I feel so bloated, or just uncomfortable in my stomach, in the belly, in the intestines. I think that's common as well. I would imagine you see some of that also.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So then, the next question is like, so what about inflammation? Like, why is that important? So what if you have some discomfort in the body? Can you speak more to kind of this idea that we're now starting to get in science overall, in the Western paradigm even, that inflammation is actually really bad and maybe is a leading cause of almost all disease? Tell us more about that.
Your body, if your body is inflamed, there is a physical, environmental, emotional, physical, or emotional threat. Your body will not inflame under normal circumstances. So if it is inflamed, there's a threat. What is the threat? And I think that's what we need to find out. Is it physical? Is it a pathogen, like we mentioned, or bacteria, or virus, or whatever, something like that? Is it a emotional, or is it a mental or environmental? So if the body is inflamed, there is something that is threatening that body, or it would not inflame. Your body's natural defense is inflammation. It's the first line of defense, because as the cells go up and inflame, it allows the body to heal, and then the inflammation goes down. And that's going back to chronic stress and chronic trauma. The inflammation never goes down because it never heals.
And so the body can never heal. And if the body can't heal, then it starts to lose its ability to do its normal healthy functioning. And so it can't, like in my own case, for example, for many years, I had Lyme disease and chronic fatigue syndrome. And the reason that I now know the reason my body could not fight off the pathogen of the Lyme disease, was because I was so taxed with unresolved trauma. I was constantly living in stress. I was overwhelmed. I was also an empath and taking on other people's emotions and issues and problems. And my system got so overwhelmed that it broke down and it could no longer do the normal things it does to fight off pathogens. So I think this may be why science is starting to think that chronic inflammation, chronic stress and inflammation may be an underlying cause of just about any disease condition. That's why I think this topic is so important, and people aren't quite yet getting the role that trauma, like you're so beautifully describing, plays in the creation of this chronic inflammation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's shift gears. So now that we know, we've kind of laid the groundwork for why this is such an important topic. So Veronica, tell us a little bit more about the body talk, just in general about body talk as a modality. I remember myself experiencing this for a few sessions years ago, and I was really fascinated with what a comprehensive system it is. It seems to me like it's taken kind of the best from multiple different perspectives and other even modalities. I mean, everything sort of from the more micro level, like cellular stuff, all the way to the more spiritual stuff. I mean, it's a very comprehensive system. Can you just give us a brief overview of what it is?
Yes, sure. So body talk looks at how the body is a sum of its parts and how it works as a whole and how they communicate with each other. So it's referred to as the body-mind complex. So very different from an allopathic approach where things are separate. So once the body works as a whole, as a sum of its parts, as a big, beautiful web of communication, what happened in an individual's environment? And this is where trauma is quite a big thing. So trauma is my specialization within the body talk modality. I don't know how, it was obviously my personal path and that's how I got there. But how that traumatic environment or incident has short-circuited how the body works. And when the body short circuits, the organs, the endocrines, the body parts, they don't function as they are supposed to. And this is why inflammation is so important, because your body's first line of defense is to inflame. So we look at basically I start my clients with a body talk session. Generally by about session 3, we have a pinpointed idea as to quite deeply how certain situations, certain roles, certain family members, societal members, or any pivotal person that made a very big impact in their life and how their body absorbed that trauma. And then we can deal with that. But purely by bringing the unconscious, conscious, there's already shift in the client. There's a shift in their awareness. And it trickles down. It trickles down into the entire body, and entire how their body communicates. So that is quite, when they say that you awareness and you're 50% there. If you've got an awareness of something, you're 50% there. And it is so true. So true.
Mm-hmm. So once you have a deeper understanding, you kind of mapped out what is happening internally in the body and how that relates to what has happened in that person's life and with the external environment and people, places, experiences, all of that, then what? How do you do the healing part?
The first thing would be is to really help the client understand exactly how their body responded. And this is a very big thing because people blame their bodies. Your body is not working against you. It's working for you. And people have, especially women, have this relationship with their body. It's not working. I'm the problem, and why it's working against me, and my stupid this and whatever. And your body is actually one of the most phenomenally intelligent designs ever. It's absolutely phenomenal. So that shift in awareness that your body did this to protect you. Your body shut down to protect you, to keep you alive, so you can keep going, so you can keep living. And that relationship with that individual and their body is hugely healing. It also doesn't happen overnight. So, it's really an ongoing process. But we do see huge shifts with talking about this is your body, this is the incident, this is how it absorbed it. So that's the first thing, and it can get very deep, it can get very emotional, and it can get very raw, which is exactly what you want, because your body will only meet itself as much as you can meet yourself, and that requires authenticity, rawness, and bravery. Bravery to look at yourself in a vulnerable way. Now, how many women are happy to look at themselves? Yes. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, as you mentioned, do TRE, which is trauma and tension release exercises. So this would stimulate the body's natural shaking response. So just to give you a bit of an idea, if we take, for example, an animal in the wild and they be chased by a lion, and either that lion is going to catch the buck and the buck's going to die, or the buck's going to get away. It's then going to a safe space. It's going to drop down to the floor and shake. It's the body's natural mechanism to expel that traumatic nervous energy, and that's what that. But we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We suppress. We keep quiet. We move on, and we forget actually. So when we do TRE, it's very important, firstly, that the client understands what it's about, because if the client is not ready and they have not started connecting the dots in their own lives, it can open a Pandora's box. So it's not for everyone. And it's got to be at a specific time when, firstly, the relationship between the therapist and the client is strong enough, because you've got to hold the space for that client. You've got to regulate their nervous system because they need to release. So this is also the beautiful part about therapy, is you can only meet your clients as much as you've met yourself.
Yes.
Because the nervous system will pick up on that. So, which is also amazing, because we have another trend, I think, worldwide towards authenticity in yourself, strength in yourself, vulnerability in yourself, and that ability to see yourself in a certain way and hold space for someone else. You are co-regulating them and holding the space and allowing them to, from a TRE perspective, I mean, this applies for all therapies, but I'm just relating it to TRE. It allows for them to actually, they call it shake it out and tremor. But it's not, don't recommend clients coming through my door and saying, all right, we're going to do TRE first. You don't know. We haven't formed a trusting relationship. We need to also know what's happening in your body a little bit, what's happening with your history, what's happening in your body. But it's quite a powerful thing. It's a natural mechanism that we've got in our body. We just don't know how to use it, or we've forgotten how to use it. Generally, by the age of 7 or 8, people stop. So even with little kids, they fall off a bike, they run to mom or dad, they're shaking, and then somewhere along the line, 7 or 8, they stop. I'm fine.
I'm fine. They shut it down and they don't allow, we're back to that pause button, right? I think that's part of, we don't allow the experience. I mean, you illustrated it so beautifully with the animal example. I've seen videos, there are videos out there of this, right? Where the natural process after going through a frightening life or death situation, if you get out of it, you survive, is to shake it out and allow it to release. And we as humans don't, we're like, shut it down, don't cry, don't shake. And then it gets stuck. That's the beginning of it getting stuck in the body with all that energy, the fear, the horror, all that, thinking you're about to die or be harmed in some kind of way. I remember after learning about this in school, I went to massage school where I first learned it, and then graduate school. And I remember while in school, I got in a really bad car accident, like a 5-car accident where I was rear-ended. I didn't see it coming. And I'd had a previous trauma when I was a child of a car accident. And this time, the first time I just went into freeze and just shock and shut down. But this time, right after it happened, before I even got out of the car to deal with, the other drivers and the situation, I started shaking and crying in the car and knew to allow myself to do it. I gave myself a few minutes to just not stop it because I didn't want to, repress this trauma. And then when I got home later, I ended up doing more. I just lay on the floor and just allowed myself to roll around and cry. And sometimes that's what's required. If you don't allow it in the beginning when it happens, if it's not possible or you're just not able to, we have to do it later. We have to hit that play button again and let it go all the way through. And the TRE is fascinating. I've experienced that as well. It's allowing the shaking to occur, but I don't even remember that it was necessary. I mean, I had a little workshop in it, but I don't even remember that it was connected to a specific trauma, which I thought was fascinating. Like when you're working with it, have you pinpointed a specific incident or experience and then allowed the shaking, or can it be more generalized, just creating a safe space for the body to release whatever it's holding on to? Maybe we don't even know what it is.
Absolutely. It can absolutely be general. It's just the example I was giving was, if someone's come to me and we know the history and we know there's that deeper level of trust. So it's easier for that person to start a TRE session earlier, if I can say it like that. But it doesn't have to be pinpointed. It absolutely doesn't have to be. Half the time, you don't know what you're releasing, which is also not a bad thing. Sometimes you don't really want to know. There's a place to know and there's a place not to know. So absolutely, we don't always know. There can become certain times where you'll have certain flashes or certain memories or certain feelings that can come about if you are quite still within yourself and quite aware of yourself. But for the most part, you were 100% correct. It's general. It is just a general release, which is also very nice and has its place. But there is a release and there is a frequency change. And with the frequency change comes change. And that's what I was saying about the Pandora's box. If you're not ready for a change, then maybe it's not the best thing for you right now, because sometimes it can. If you release and it's suppressed trauma, but it has a fundamental change on your frequency. It's a fundamental change on your frequency. And that changes your shift in reality almost, because you are a combination of your frequency, of how your cells vibrate based on certain environmental factors, your beliefs, who you are, what you think, what you eat. All those create a hologram of frequency. So it's quite an interesting, but it doesn't always go full way Pandora's box. I'm just saying you've got to be quite careful as a client and as a practitioner just to be aware that it is a possibility.
Well,
That's
I just
all.
think it speaks to the power of these techniques and how important it is for people to make sure that they're not doing this entirely on their own. Trauma processing on your own really is not advised. And to be working with someone who is an expert, who has had training, knows what they're doing, has done their own work so that they can, co-regulate and hold that space with you and deal with whatever it is that comes up. Because I agree with you. I think when we're dealing with unresolved trauma, we don't know the extent of it. People have forgotten or repressed memories. Bodies are holding and it's far more vast than your personal experience, right? It can be the intergenerational trauma. It could be a cultural trauma, like, in a country or a race of people that have experienced something more collectively. And in the times we're living in right now, there's a tremendous amount, I think, of unresolved trauma that's coming to the surface in the collective. Like, look at the wars and the political strife and the violence and just general insanity that is affecting us as well. And for some people who have that, are holding on to that trauma in their bodies, they're getting triggered right now in the world, the state of affairs in the world. Have you noticed that with any of your clients?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think that's why this work is so important, because you think it only affects you, and it's absolutely not. It affects your neighbor. It affects. We're all connected. So there's we're all absolutely connected. So people come to me to there's a physical problem or there's a behavioral problem, and then we deal with them. And as you go deeper and deeper and peel layers back, obviously you go deep into your own trauma, and like you so correctly put, intergenerational trauma, which is passed down through DNA. So a lot of what you're carrying it didn't originate with you, but you're still holding it. You can holding something that you can potentially be triggered by, but it's not your stuff. It is your stuff, but it never started, or the point of origin wasn't with you as an individual. But it is still your responsibility to society, to your children, and to yourself, to be quite honest. So I do think that collective trauma is a massive, massive thing right now. I feel like it's really, really large, and it's people are becoming quite aware of it. Whereas before, trauma was an individual thing, and you must just write about it. Now we're able to have these discussions. People are having these discussions all over the world.
And they need to be, and I think this will take us into the quantum field next year, but this idea that taking responsibility for your own experiences, and also, like, a lot of my clients have been pretty overwhelmed here in the States with some of the things happening here, and in the Middle East, and all over the place. But one of the things that I say to them is, well, look, if you want to help, because they feel kind of hopeless or overwhelmed with what's happening in the world, well, your contribution can be to keep working on yourself, keep working with your own shadow material, as we say, some of this material, because we push it in the shadow, we don't want to look at it. Be willing to face your shadow, be willing to do this deeper work, begin to have these conversations, heal yourself of your own traumas, and the ripple effect that will have, not just on your own loved ones, of course, they would benefit from that, but the world at large, which really speaks now to this idea of the quantum field, that we are all connected. What's happening, what is the butterflies flapping its wings over here, and the effect is felt over there. You're in South Africa right now, I'm in the US, and yet energetically we are, the distance, and that is irrelevant. We are energetically connected. Can you
Absolutely.
speak to that in terms of this work you're doing with the quantum talk therapy?
So yes, absolutely. Quantum talk therapy came about. So, so I felt like when I saw my clients, there was a bit of a gap in terms of them wanting to address and wanting to talk to someone that is A, no longer present, or B, is not accessible, or C, they actually don't want to. And that's also okay, because one must also respect their own boundaries, and one must be very aware of what they're okay with, because you don't want to re-traumatize either. So that's pretty much how quantum field talk therapy came quite popular, or quite it's quite a therapy that I use quite often now, and more so as people are becoming more aware of the quantum and how things are connected. So just to go back on the quantum field talk therapy, An individual will address another individual that was a pivotal role in their trauma. And so they would lie down, we would go through certain exercises, they would almost like a meditative state, and they would start entering alpha, so fully aware, but aware more within themselves out of their ego. So the ability to perceive people, the ability to perceive the idea of what happened, the ability to perceive situations is somewhat different when it's through a different filter. And that was the first thing. So it gives the client quite a bit of perspective. The second thing is when they start talking to this individual. So we can say, for example, like a narcissistic mother that absolutely a client cannot talk to, so they are never going to resolve it in the physical world. Physical world, I use it, lightly, for example. So they would go in a meditative state and talk to their mother about it. And you did this, and you did this, and I felt this, and I felt this. And what is phenomenal is that the client is able, yes, they're able to get it out, which is the first thing, and move that energy out from talking. The second thing is that client is able to access suppressed feelings, even suppressed people that they didn't think were part of their trauma. So we'll finish the session, they're like, oh, this person came up. I'm like, let's talk about this person. Let's talk to this person, because it was so suppressed. And when they're able to access that part of their mind, that part of their subconscious, they're able to release it in a safe space where everything and anything, it's whatever comes up is okay, because it's inside you. You don't want it inside, you want it outside, because energy is going to go somewhere, and you don't want it in your body, and you don't want it in your body for 80 years either. So that is on the other aspect, is you're able to give you a good insight into what is really suppressed in your body. Because we operate 5%. I mean, I think our conscious mind only, or what we understand, it's only about 5%. 90 to 95% is subconscious. So we're all walking around programs from our subconscious minds. So that also speaks to what we were talking about when everything is connected. So everything is connected in the quantum. So I say something to you, butterfly effect. It's got an effect. So my client says something to the narcissistic mother. We don't see it immediately, but there's absolutely an energetic effect and an energetic connection and an energetic exchange on a different level. And it's the same within the body. So, a cell in your toe knows exactly what's happening with the cell in your eye, because it's that communication. So we look at it on a micro level, and then we look at it on a macro level. Exactly what I was saying before. Everything that's going on in the world is collective as to what's going on inside every single person. It's all a collective. So when you do the work, you look at yourself, you try, I don't want to use the word be the best you can be, but that's pretty much what I'm getting, is just be aware of yourself. And as a compassionate witness, one of my instructors used to use that word a lot, and I really like it. Just view yourself. You're a compassionate witness to yourself. You don't have to react. You definitely don't have to judge, because you're going to go spiral right back into trauma if you judge. You just look. This is who I am. This is what I did. This is what happened. This is why. And then when you're able to see yourself like that, you see yourself almost like an inner child. So this is how we get to inner child work. And that's another thing what I do in quantum field talk therapy, is that I bring that in that client will bring their inner child up. And oh my goodness gracious, what? We've got no idea what our inner child wants to tell us. And again, half the time it's not our stuff, because you're under the age of 7, you're under the age of 8, you're in full programming mode. So it's really is it's a long process. It's peeling the layers of an onion back, and I think it's very, very brave of every individual that actually does it. I think it's absolutely phenomenal, because you need to look at yourself authentically. Strip the ego, strip whatever mask you've had to, because everybody has to, especially when it comes to trauma, because it's a survival mechanism. Act a certain way, and fight, flight, fawn, all those kind of things. It's behavioral mechanisms that served a very important role to keep you safe. It's not that there was anything wrong with it, so we're not going to judge it. But 30 years later, doesn't really serve the same purpose it did.
No, it's a re-traumatization to judge it, make yourself wrong, right? To emphasize the shame, or it's my fault, or whatever. I'm broken now because this happened. All the limiting beliefs that come out of those experiences are extremely toxic. And I think, it's so important, everything that you're talking about. And what I hope that the audience gets from our conversation today, as we start to wind it down, is hope. Like, no, this may not be easy work. It does take a lot of courage, but healing is possible. I think a lot of people have this belief that I can never heal from my trauma. I'll never be able to get over these terrible things that have happened, especially if it's multiple things. I'll never be able to get over this, but that's simply not true. Trauma is an energy. Energy can be manipulated and finessed and released, and trauma that's locked in the body can be found and healed. And these modalities, these beautiful modalities you've described to us, absolutely, and many others that are out there, absolutely can allow us to become free of it, and to have a completely different energy and be a different energy in the world and create profound change in the world, because we've done our own healing. So really, it's phenomenal work that you're doing, Veronica. Thank you so much for talking with me about this today. If people want to find out more about you, about your work, where do they go?
So they can check out my socials, Veronica Let's Talk. So that's Veronica, Veronica, normal spelling, Let's Talk. And they can connect with me there, or veronicalet'stalk@gmail.com. More than welcome to pop me an email. We can chat over there. I'll send them information, set up sessions. I do everything remote except for the trauma release exercises. That has to be done in person. But in terms of body talk, quantum, field talk therapy, most of my clients are remote. So just pop me an email and we can chat.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for being on the show today and offering us some hope, offering us a lot of really valuable education. For those of you listening and watching, if you have found this material helpful, please do share it. Share a link, subscribe, rate the show, whatever all the things are that you can do that allow more people to access information like this, because it's so important in this challenging time we're in. We need these tools. We need to have these conversations now more than ever. So thank you, Veronica. Thank you, audience. See you next time on Kaleidoscope of Possibilities.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time.